Unlike both horror remakes, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003 and the Amityville Horror from 2005, which were also produced by Bay, Form, and Fuller, it was decided that this film would not be a period piece. Form and Fuller said that this film was not strictly a remake, but more of a reimagining, so there was no reason they could not set this story in the 2000s. And so that's where this story would take place, in director Marcus Nispel's 2009 film, Friday the 13th.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham and I am here along with Chris, and today we are wrapping up our final film in the Friday the 13th franchise, and that is Friday the 13th from 2009, or the remake or reboot of Friday the 13th. I seen this in theaters. I had a blast. I went with a family friend of my dad. I went with her daughter, and this was just an awesome and fun time. I was in ninth grade at the time when this came out, and we just had a blast. You know, there were some parts of this that, being with like my dad's friend, there was some nudity parts that it was like, all right, do I look away being this like 14, 15-year-old kid, or do I gawk at it like a normal, young teen kid would, or but
Yeah,
this, I had fun with this film. This is awesome. Chris, I think I remember you saying that you seen this in theaters as well.
I did. So I wasn't quite 17 yet. I was a few years from 17, or a few months. Sorry, pardon me, a few months from 17. My older brother and two of my high school buddies, we all went and saw this on the day of release, Friday, February 13th, 2009. And we were all technically, or most of the three of us, think, were technically 16 at the time. So not you weren't supposed to be old enough to get into an R-rated movie on your own. It's 17 or older. My older brother was 4 years older, but he wasn't 21 yet. And so, like, really the rule is that if you're under 17, it's supposed to be a parent or guardian. So, like, it kind of was just like we went kind of in the middle of the day, and he kind of just bought the four tickets, and they just didn't really say anything to us. But strictly speaking, because that movie theater that I saw this at, I actually ended up becoming one of the managers there eventually when I worked there later. And like, so strictly speaking, that should not have been how it happened. He shouldn't have been able to buy us tickets, but I think it was just like we slipped through the cracks kind of a thing, or they weren't looking to have an argument. And so we saw this on opening day, or maybe the day after it came out. And, um, yeah, we loved it. So it was a bunch of, teen guys basically watching it. And like there were, one of my friends was kind of the more just like pervy one, I guess. So like anytime there was nudity or anything like that, you just heard him kind of like mumble like, "Oh hell yeah" to himself. So that was funny. We didn't have any of the like, "Oh, we're with parents or girlfriends" or anything like that. So it was just a funny and entertaining and really like cool movie to see when you're teenagers, just hanging out with the guys.
And yeah, and I mean, the female cast in this, I mean, it's a very attractive female cast. Probably
Yeah.
like the best out of the Friday the 13th franchise, it being
Nothing wrong.
modern day.
Yeah, nothing wrong with saying that. Nothing wrong with saying that.
No, and I mean, even, if you want to say, I mean, you got a couple pretty boys in the male castings as well. You get Jared Padalecki, and
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
who,
sure plenty of Supernatural fans were happy to see him in the movie.
yes, absolutely. I tried getting into that series, and I just couldn't. I mean, that's a little off topic, but I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah,
But I do like
I'm
him in
not.
this film.
Yeah, I was never a Supernatural fan either. But man, I know some people who live and die by that show. So more power to them.
Well, I mean, yeah, and then you got Travis Van Winkle as Trent. I mean, he's a pretty boy in the film and stuff like that. So I mean, all around, this is a very good looking cast.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good looking movie in general. Just got a good aesthetic to it.
Absolutely, I agree with you on that. With it being the first film, since Freddy vs. Jason, so we get the two remakes of Rob Zombie for the Halloween franchise, and for fans are clamoring for a Friday the 13th film, and you hear about this one coming out, and instantly I was super excited. It's one of those things that I don't see a lot of films in theaters unless it's like something I 1,000,000% have to go see. So as soon as I
Hmm.
heard about this one, or like I seen the trailer for it, I was like, oh yeah, that's something that's got to be seen on the big screen.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that when it came out, it was like, oh my gosh, it's been 6 years since Freddy versus Jason. Freddy versus Jason felt so long ago, and we've now been 15 and a half years since this movie came out. And it's like, man, when and if the next Friday the 13th comes out, it'll have been a lifetime between this reboot and that new movie. And relatively speaking, this and Freddy versus Jason were quite close to one another, even though it feels like there's this whole removal. It feels like there was 10 years between those two movies. It's interesting.
Yeah, the only thing that has kept me sane from that is from this long wait we've had is going back and watching the classics, and then some of the fan films that we've spoken about on previous episodes. They've kind of held me over for now, but when it finally does hit the big screen again, in 2045, I'll be there.
Yeah, I think we've got a Friday the 13th coming up in February of 26. I think it's going to be exactly the same as 2009, where Friday the 13th of February is in 2026. So maybe they'll have it out then. Who knows? But interesting that you brought up some of the other remakes. For me, this far removed, I think this one, not to play my hand here a little bit, but I think this one holds up maybe the best out of all of those sort of 2000s remakes and reboots of all of the horror icons.
And for you, that Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, yeah, all the ones, I mean, stuff like The Grudge too, but like the long running ones, you had, it started with Texas Chainsaw, and then it moved to Halloween, and then it was Friday the 13th and Nightmare right after that. You had the Amityville Horror, and I'm sure there are a couple other, maybe lower like level ones that I'm not thinking of, but those are the big ones. But if I had to pick, I'm like, this one's my jam.
Yeah, this film it starts off balls to the wall, and then it's brutal. It's fast paced. I'll probably agree with you on that. That out of the horror remakes we got in the from 2000 to 2010 in those years, that this is probably my favorite of those.
Yeah, and I mean and Friday, Texas Chainsaw the beginning, I have a soft spot for. Not a fan of the Nightmare remake, and kind of I generally like the Rob Zombie Halloween movies as kind of their own thing. Like I'm not someone who like I just hate most of them and this is the only good one. It's like no, it's like I generally feel pretty good about most of them. I just like this one the best.
Absolutely. I'll give you a little information on Friday the 13th from 2009. Friday the 13th is an American slasher film directed by Marcus Nispel and written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, from a story by Shannon Swift and Mark Wheaton. It is the 12th installment in the Friday the 13th franchise. The film stars Jared Padalecki, Danielle Panabaker, Aaron Yu, Amanda Rigetti, Travis Van Winkle, and Derek Mears as Jason Voorhees. The film was originally conceived as an origin story, but the project evolved into a reimagining or reboot of the first four Friday the 13th films. Jason Voorhees was redesigned as a lean, quick killer with a backstory that allows the viewer to feel sympathy for him, but not enough that he would lose his menace mentality. In keeping with the tone of the film, Jason's mask was recreated from a mold of the original hockey mask used from Friday the 13th Part 3 in 1982 with minor changes. The film includes some of Harry Manfredini's musical score from the previous Friday the 13th films because the producers recognized its iconic status. So that's an awesome little nod that they did. And then Friday the 13th was theatrical released in the United States on February 13th, 2009, and it received negative reviews while also becoming the second highest grossing film in the franchise after Freddy vs. Jason from 2003. So there's a little background and information on the film.
Yeah, and I remember it had a huge opening weekend because the Friday was Friday the 13th, so it timed well to the title of the movie. The very next day was Valentine's Day, which scary movies and rom-coms make great date movies for Friday the third for Valentine's Day. So you had all the teens going to see a scary movie for Valentine's Day, and then that Monday was President's Day. So it was a 4-day weekend with like 3 big days of that would perform more than they normally would. And so I remember this made like a lot of money in those first 4 days, and then it kind of dropped off a cliff because so many people just went out and saw it somewhere in that 4 day stretch.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to the theater, I mean, it was a packed house, and the the energy from the crowd and stuff was electric. It was great, and I mean, again, when we finally do get one of these back in theaters, it's been so long that I feel like fans will flock to the theaters, and I feel like it'll be a great theater experience once we get back to it.
Yeah.
If we ever do. I mean, it the legal stuff has to end somewhere. You would think.
Yeah, it's tough, and it feels like, once it gets too long, you almost worry that there's going to be a whole generation that kind of came up without any of these movies. I think the longest gap between any of the movies was, I guess, between Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, which was something like 9 years. And we've now, we're at 15 and a half. And so it's, we're coming up on doubling that. And it's crazy to think it's like there might be this whole generation that went from age 8 to 18 or age 8 to 22 without one of these movies even being released. And so it's kind of crazy to think about. It's like you hope that the slasher genre is something that can kind of come back around. I know a lot of horror movies these days it's all about supernatural. It's all about hauntings and demons and monsters and spooks and ghosts and all that stuff. And it's like you hope that maybe the good old fashioned slasher movie could become a thing again. We'll see, I suppose.
And that's the thing I've thought as well is we got the new trilogy of the Halloween and Michael Myers films. Freddy, he's been pretty quiet as well since the 2010 reboot,
Mm-hmm.
and Jason's been quiet since the 2009 reboot. So my thought was that these new Halloween films would bring back interest in Freddy and Jason, and we had the Child's Play reboot that came out, and it had mixed reviews for that, but
Yeah, and
everything's coming back. But these
yeah, and
two
they
franchises.
Yeah, and they continued, and the weird thing with the Child's Play thing, because they continued to continue the original series, and I'm pretty sure the TV series is continuing that original continuity, even as they did that reboot, because I think the rights for that original film are in a unique spot where whatever company or entity had those rights was free to remake that original movie, but the other parties involved were also free to continue their TVs and straight to video movies. So it's like that was kind of a weird thing from the start with it being kind of split like that. And yeah, I did think that maybe there was a chance that Halloween could have brought it back. And I mean, I liked the first two entries of that modern Halloween trilogy. The less I say about Halloween Ends, the better. But I mean, it and it's almost like one of those things where it wouldn't have been surprising to see it revive it, but in another kind of weird thing, it's like, well, the whole kind of modern slasher genre was started with the original Halloween, and it seems like it's kind of ended all over again with the new Halloween movies. Maybe it's another hiatus that we're in store for. Who knows?
When it comes to like these franchises and stuff, like Michael Myers has always been my favorite horror icon, but the Friday the 13th franchise as a whole, I enjoy more. So I'm kind of I'm flip. I'm battling back and forth with like who I like, what I want to watch with these films, And Jason and Michael are easily my top two, and Jason, Michael, and Freddy are leaps and bounds above everyone else for most of the horror community. So I mean, these are always fun to talk about, and I hope we get get them all back on the big screen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe, these things always come in cycles, and right now, like, Insidious and The Conjuring, and then the It reboot, it felt like it just ushered in a decade or more of the cheap haunted house, essentially poltergeist movies, and it feels like we've just had nothing but the supernatural stuff for like the last 10 years. And so it's like, gosh, it's like, can we just go back to something that's a bit more, traditional? Which is shocking that Nightmare on Elm Street wasn't incorporated into all that they didn't try to do some new dark, really grounded reboot or remake of Nightmare on Elm Street within that. But I think because of the way the last Nightmare on Elm Street was received, the last reboot, I don't think they're too keen on bringing it back anytime soon.
Well, I know this is going off topic, but I know that Kevin Bacon was showing interest in playing Freddy Krueger for a little bit of time there, and I think that could have been a fun scenario. I know that's a little offhand, but I feel like he could have
I remember
portrayed
when
that
that was
well.
rumored, and I think sadly now he might be a little. I remember when that was like a 10 or 15 years ago kind of a thing, and that could have been really interesting. But I don't know if I think we're maybe past that point now. I think they would want to get someone a little bit who could play the character for a couple of years. I don't think we'll ever get 6, 7, 8 entries of these franchises anymore. I think if you bring them back, it's for 1 to 3 movies, and that'll be kind of it. And then but I mean, if Halloween can be brought back for a trilogy, maybe Jason and Freddy can be as well.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we get into a trailer and a plot synopsis on the film, and then we will continue on with Friday the 13th.
Did you know a young boy drowned here? He was my son, and today is his birthday.
Yeah, baby! You won't believe my parents' cabin.
Here we are. Pretty nice, huh?
All right, you ready?
Let's do it!
Yeah!
Oh my god!
Hey, I'm not from around here, but I'm looking for my sister. She's gone missing. Have you seen her?
She ain't missing. She's dead. People go missing around here, they're gone for good.
There's something out there. We gotta get out of here. Come on, you guys. Oh my god.
This place is called Camp Crystal Lake. Are you in there?
Police, open up!
Help! We got this guy killing everybody!
What are you doing, Dory?
What's going? Jason!
His name was Jason, and today is his birthday.
On Friday, June 13th, 1980, a young Jason Voorhees watches as his mother Pamela is beheaded by a camp counselor who is trying to escape Miss Voorhees' murder spree around Camp Crystal Lake. Almost 30 years later, 5 friends, Wade, Richie, his girlfriend Amanda, Mike, and his girlfriend Whitney, arrive for a camping trip at Crystal Lake, where they hope to find a crop of marijuana growing in the woods. That night, an adult Jason kills everyone except Whitney, whom he captures as she resembles his mother at a young age. 6 weeks later, Trent, his girlfriend Jenna, and friends Chelsea, Bree, Chewie, Nolan, and Lawrence arrive at Trent's summer cabin on the shore of Crystal Lake. Meanwhile, Whitney's brother Clay Miller arrives at the lake to search for her, despite his local sheriff's pleas to look elsewhere. Clay visits Trent's cabin, and Jenna agrees to help him search for Whitney. Chelsea and Nolan go wakeboarding on the lake, where Jason kills Nolan with an arrow and fatally stabs Chelsea with his machete. Meanwhile, Clay and Jenna search the old Crystal Lake campgrounds, where they see Jason hauling a body into the abandoned camp house. Jenna and Clay run back to the cabin to warn the others about Jason. Chewie is killed by Jason in a tool shed near the cabin, while Trent and Bree have sex in a bedroom. Jenna and Clay arrive, and Clay calls the police. Jason then disconnects the cabin's electricity. Lawrence heads outside to search for Chewie, and Jason kills him with an axe. Jason then sneaks inside and kills Bree. A police officer arrives and knocks on the front door, but is killed by Jason before he can enter. Trent, Clay, and Jenna escape the cabin and become separated, and Trent is killed by Jason when he reaches the main road. Jason chases Clay and Jenna back to the campgrounds, where Clay discovers Jason's lair and finds his sister underground, chained to a wall. Clay frees Whitney, and all three try to escape as Jason arrives. They find an exit, but Jenna is impaled by Jason's machete before she can escape. Jason corners Clay and Whitney in a barn, and Whitney confuses Jason by pretending to be Pamela. Clay and Whitney subdue Jason with a chain, and Whitney stabs Jason in the chest with his machete. After sunrise, Clay and Whitney dump Jason's body into the lake, but before they leave, Jason bursts through the wooden deck and grabs Whitney.
All right, how about I throw some numbers out at you?
Sounds good.
Friday the 13th, 2009 had a budget of $19 million and grossed $92.7 million at the box office. And Chris, what is that with our inflation numbers for today?
So that would have been roughly the equivalent of a $27.8 million budget and a $135.9 million box office return. So a really good ROI, as they say, really good return on investment. But I think there was a little bit of a divided response from critics and fans, and I think the fast collapse after the initial huge opening weekend made them very nervous. And then it was stuck in development for a while as far as the sequel goes, and then all of the legal stuff started to pop up, which delayed things even further. And here we are.
Yeah, I have that in some of my fun facts a little later, that drop off after that first weekend, but I don't know what fans and critics expected when they were going to see this, but this is one of the most Friday the 13th films in the franchise. Like, if you come to see a Friday the 13th franchise, this film is very much a Friday the 13th film. You got nudity, you got Jason, you got the kills, you got the potheads, the Joker. You got a little bit, I feel like, from almost each film wrapped into this one, and how they say this one is kind of like a reboot of the first four into one. So this, I don't know what fans and critics were expecting when they didn't like this film or gave it a bad review.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the critics gave it a bad review. They give all of these movies a bad review, but with the fans, that's one that kind of perplexes me as well, because this is the first traditional back to the basics Friday the 13th we've gotten really since the fourth entry. Number 5 didn't have Jason at all, and then 6, he's a revived zombie. 7 fights a sidekick. 8 goes on a ship and then to New York. 9, he's body hopping. X, he's in space. Then he's fighting Freddy. Like, he hadn't been in a normal movie for decades at this point, and so I was very happy to see this one go back to that mold and that style. And I think it's like the quintessential horror movie reboot. It goes back to the first several entries of the series, which were generally regarded as the best. It pulls some of the best elements narratively from all of those films and wraps it up into one kind of package and gives you, this new iteration of it, this I don't think they could have picked like a better way to do a fresh, grounded start on the series. So, it's not some perfect masterpiece, but I really don't get the complaints about it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Very, very well said. I can't say anything else, but I absolutely agree with you on that. Talking about like the ratings and the critics, this film is rated a 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb. It holds a 25% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a 34% rating on Metacritic. 76% of Google users like this film, so our Chad Google users clicking away again.
Definitely.
And then there are a total of 14 deaths in this film, averaging out to one death every 7.5 minutes. And then Jason is on screen
for right around 10 minutes or about 9.5% of the film.
So, I mean, those are some good numbers here. What we get of Jason in this film, I mean, it's phenomenal. Every time he's on screen, on camera, I absolutely love it. And I mean, I love, the deaths that are brought into this film and everything. We'll get into it, but I mean, as a Friday the 13th and a Jason fan, I absolutely love this film and have a blast with it.
Yeah, he's Jason the Hunter in this movie. I really dig it. He's got this sort of resourceful, outdoorsman kind of vibe to him. He's not just, a random kind of specter or zombie or anything like that. Like he's a living being, and he's living in the caves and the woods, and it's kind of just, he's kind of like this territorial animal. And when you come messing around in his territory, he is just gonna eliminate you by all means available to him, and he knows how to do it well because he's been doing it for years, and I really like that. He's kind of honed in, and he has a skill set almost.
Absolutely. Kind of like one of the quotes I wanted to bring up earlier. I'll bring it up now if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
It's for the elderly woman that Clay ends up going to see, and she's like, people go missing around here, they're gone for good. Like outsiders, they come and they don't know where to walk. They bring trouble, and people just want to be left alone, and so does he. And he's just like, so does who? Like he has no idea, but it's like she knows exactly what's going on, and she knows like to stay out of it, keep her distance. And it's like, if you do that, you're golden. But if you happen to stumble upon Camp Crystal Lake in this film, he's not taking any hostages.
Yeah, it's like the locals know that he's there and that you better stay away. Simple as that.
Yep, absolutely. That is all I have for numbers for you on this film. I do have some good fun facts on this film that I think you and anyone else listening will appreciate.
Yeah, break them out.
The first one is, on its opening day, Friday the 13th grossed $19,293,446 and immediately exceeded the individual box office gross for The New Blood, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason Goes to Hell, and Jason X, which those earned $19 million, $14 million, $15 million, and $13 million respectively in their entire theatrical run. So this film, granted, inflation rates and ticket prices and stuff.
Yeah, but it wasn't inflated to that degree, though. It wasn't. That's still very impressive, even when you consider roughly 20 years of ticket price inflation. That's still pretty impressive to just dwarf them like that.
Yeah, in one weekend compared to, how often back then, like films were in theaters for 2 months, 3 months sometimes if they were doing well. So, I mean,
Indeed.
A wheelchair and a sweater can be seen in Jason's tunnels during the film, representing the character Mark from Friday the 13th Part 2 was a paraplegic, and then Mrs. Voorhees wore a sweater in the original version of Friday the 13th from 1980. And then there's also a bicycle propped up against the wall just under the wheelchair. It's likely Ralph's bicycle from Part 1 and 2 as a callback to that. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah, which I kind of dig. Like this is kind of billed and marketed as a bit of a reboot, and certainly you can watch it completely fresh as if it's entry number one. But it does kind of work in the same way that the Halloween 2018 film was a direct sequel to the first movie. You could almost watch part 1 and part 2, Friday the 13th 1 and 2, and then go to this movie, and it kind of plays. He's still got the sack on his head at the start of this movie. This becomes like a new part 3 where he transitions from the sack to the hockey mask, and you kind of use part 1 and 2 as the kind of general backstory for this movie. I've always kind of liked to think about it like that in my head, so I think those references are fun.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you there. Actress Willa Ford was given 10 days to learn how to wakeboard for her role. She said wakeboarding itself wasn't as nerve-wracking as having to do it topless. So I don't know if I'd be able to learn how to wakeboard in 10 days, let alone almost doing it in the nude.
Yeah, exactly. I think that speaks for itself. But, the script demands what the script demands, I suppose.
What I heard I was watching YouTube the other day, I was just watching reviews of films, and what he said anytime there was female nudity on a screen is, oh yeah, they're key to the plot, and it just gave me a laugh.
Yeah, it's necessary. I've got a buddy that anytime he describes an actress who is in a movie and she happened to go nude, he always takes a moment to say, great performance. I saw one video thumbnail that called this the Friday the 13th reboob instead of reboot.
100% could see that.
Yeah.
There is a lot of nudity in this film.
Yeah, they're pandering to the core tenets of the franchise, I suppose.
Hey, at least it's not trashy like Part 5.
Yeah.
It's stupendous.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
This is director Marcus Nispel's second remake of a classic horror film. In a resume of only 4 feature films, the first was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003, which was also produced by the company Platinum Dunes, which produced this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me personally, I like this one better than the 2003 Texas Chainsaw. That's just me personally, probably because I'm much more partial to Jason, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. Originally, Bree was supposed to set up her camcorder at the edge of the bed to film her and Trent's sex scene. However, before filming, Juliana suggested she hold the camcorder in one hand to make it more zany and racy. The director liked the idea and decided to use it.
Oh, wow. It would have been interesting to see, because you imagine if she'd set it up on the bed corner, that would have been like an angle of footage that it would have kept cutting back to. So that would have been interesting to see. I certainly think that's the more realistic scenario, as opposed to like a POV perspective from the girl's perspective. But I mean, I guess it depends on who she was planning to share this video with.
As Trent said, this better not go on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Trent, Travis Van Winkle, who plays Trent, has the same name as his character Trent DeMarco from Transformers in 2007, which was directed by Michael Bay. According to Bay himself, this is the same character, revealing that both this movie and that franchise occur in the same universe.
Yep, and Paramount Pictures released both movies. Michael Bay was a director on that film and a producer on this film. So, it's officially canon that you watch the 2007 Transformers movie and, Trent goes from being broken up with by Megan Fox to being with the Jenna in this movie and cheating on her with Bree in this movie. So, Trent does all right for himself before he gets offed by Jason.
He absolutely does. Scout Taylor Compton auditioned for the role of Jenna, which eventually went to Danielle Panabaker. Had she gotten the role, this would have been the second remake of a classic horror film for Compton after starring in Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007.
Man, I actually think, I think Danielle Panabaker was good as Jenna, but I could totally see Scout Taylor Compton doing well in that role.
Yeah, I liked her in the Rob Zombie films, and I've seen her in 1 or 2 other films that I can't name off the top of my head, but I like her as an actress. I mean, she's not one of my favorites, But I mean, she's nothing terrible at all. I think she's a good actress.
Yeah, and I think it would have been good to see her in kind of like a more a normal kind of movie than the Rob Zombie movies where she's just getting put through like torment endlessly through 2 movies. You know, it would have been nice to see her in like a standard role.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, Danielle Panabaker, I like her as like the innocent, almost final girl in this film.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but oh man, you know, yeah, I was rooting for Jenna the whole time.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you. My last one for you is in October 2009, Warner Bros. Pictures set a release date for a sequel to Friday the 13th as August 13th, 2010. But on December 10th, the sequel was pulled from its release date and was delayed indefinitely. In April 2010, producer Brad Fuller announced that a sequel to the film was not happening. So as a young kid, you know, I always stayed up on this stuff with movies, as I still do today with sequels. Always trying to look on the internet, see what I can find. But that was very disappointing news to me because I think a sequel to this, if they would have brought back Derek Mears as Jason to continue and see what he could continue doing, I think we could have had a couple more good films.
Yeah, and I think Jared Padalecki could have definitely become like the new Tommy Jarvis mold for a couple of movies, you know, for 2 or 3. And yeah, we went from potentially getting a sequel a year and a half later to now getting nothing for a decade and a half.
Not a good look, Friday the 13th.
We're not living in the best timeline.
Well, but that's all I have for you on fun facts. There were so many that I could have found for this film that I could have probably went for another half hour without even having discussions on them. I could have just ranted them off for you. But I just chose a couple that way we could get into the good stuff, which is our list of favorites. So you don't have any fun facts for us, do you?
No. The only one I was going to make a point to mention, if you did not, was the connection to Transformers, because I always found that one fascinating.
All right, I always like when you shoot them out, so I figured I'd better check.
Yeah, no, you got the good ones.
All right, so who was your favorite character from the film then?
So, I mean, to kind of do a kind of two-way tie or whatever, you know, I did like, even though I'm not a fan of Supernatural, so I don't have any familiarity with him, I did like Jared Padalecki as Clay. I thought he was very much like, I think there were perhaps legal reasons why they didn't just call him Tommy Jarvis, or maybe they didn't want to use that and kind of give away that he would probably survive or be the hero of the movie. But clearly, you know, his sibling dynamic with Whitney is both a play on the Tommy Jarvis dynamic with his sister Trish, but also on who is it, Rob in part 4, who's trying to sort of look for or avenge his sister Sandra's death, you know, and he's got that kind of like outdoorsman hunter sort of a thing going on. So it's clearly like a little, you know, they're playing on a lot of these sort of themes that we've seen before, and so I like Clay as a sort of new combinant character of all those things. And then as far as like comedic relief, I had to go with Chewie. I just thought Chewie is like the textbook funny, goofy guy that you like to have in these movies. And so, you know, I liked his performance a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a lot of comedy relief lines in this. And he was fun. And then he shows up in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake as well for a little cameo in that one. You know, he's not in it a lot, but for a couple scenes, he's there.
And he had a highlight role in Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf, I believe. You know, so he had a nice little run there for a few years. You know, and I think he's a talented guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did choose one of the two that you mentioned. I ended up choosing Clay. You know, the guy, he's just looking for his sister, and I have 2 sisters, so I can relate. I would probably be the guy out looking for my sister. Clear, I'm not, you know, anyone who knows me knows I'm not a big as guy as Jared Padalecki is, you know, but he kind of, you know, Jason manhandles him a little bit, but he gives him a little fight there in the end. You know, he holds his own for a little bit. I would probably just be dead.
Oh yeah, against Jason, dude, I'd be. the only hope I would have of surviving Jason would be that if I could outrun him, that would be the only chance. There's no path where I confront Jason and come out alive.
No, Clay's a trooper for that in this film, and in this film, you might not even be able to outrun the guy because
I know.
He's awesome in this film.
You get an axe in your back or something.
Yeah, but I did end up choosing Clay. I like the sister aspect. I liked that he wasn't afraid to confront Jason when he had to, and he was just a very easy character to like in this film. So he's the one I chose as my favorite. But I mean, all around, it's a fun cast all around.
I like that he shuts down Trent's douchebaggery, and he's rolling up in there like Mr. Steal Your Girl, just, he meets Jenna and then 30 seconds later she's like, you want company?
I don't know if we'll mention this in quotes. I wouldn't think so, but and he's like, you should probably go before I get pissed off, and and he goes, well, what happens then? And it's like, that's such a badass line.
It's really good. He does it without overdoing it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go ahead with my favorite score, which I had kind of like, I liked a couple in this film. I liked the opening titles. I liked one that was called Chasing Whitney, and then I liked the end credits. So, I mean, those were all good. I genuinely like this soundtrack. It wasn't the same repeated soundtrack that we got for like the first 8 films, of the original Friday the 13th franchise. They brought back a couple winks and nods, but it was completely different, and I thought a lot of it fit the scene that it was like shadowing over. So I like this soundtrack.
Yeah, Steve Jablonsky did a really good job. He did a couple of video game scores. I think at least one of the Gears of War games he composed for, and what I think at least one of the Transformers movies. And so another Transformers connection there. But the track that I kind of picked out was called Sleeping Kabag, which is a pun on kebab, and it's the track when he strings Amanda up in her sleeping bag over the fire, and there's just this, it's kind of the first sequence in the movie where just chaos is ensuing. People are getting picked off left and right, and it kind of has these riffs, these like guitar riffs in there and everything that's just super intense, and it really let you know what kind of movie you were in store for. So I chose that track.
Absolutely. Everything we just mentioned is a track that I like from this film. And I mean, even the more subtle, like calm, slow stuff, that there's a lot of like ominous tones in this. And it just, I think it fits the film well for not having a Friday the 13th film for 6 years. And then we didn't really get any of the Harry Manfredini music in Freddy vs. Jason. We got a little bit in Jason X, but it for a new soundtrack, all in all, this is one of the ones I like, that they didn't have a lot of the original music from, just little, like I said, winks and nods. So
yeah, musically, it definitely was a new beginning, and I really liked the intensity of it.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll get to a couple in this one, but what was your 3 favorite quotes you got?
You know me so well. I've got 3 of them that I picked out. I mean, well, first thing I want to say is that this movie is genuinely hilarious. I think outside of like, I think even more than Jason Lives, this movie's like truly funny without making Jason a joke. The characters are just, people are like, oh, it's like American Pie humor with a bunch of killing in it. It's like, yeah, but it's like, what other way should a Friday the 13th movie be? I mean, it's the teenage hanging out, hooking up mentality combined with a brutal serial killer. So, I mean, it really should be 50% kind of goofy rom-com almost, and then 50% horror movie. So I thought the characters being as humorous and goofy as they are made total sense. And plus, as clearly displayed in the film, most of the characters are some combination of drunk or high the entire time. So that only makes you act like even more of a goofball. So I mean, I thought all the characters like being very comedic was perfectly reasonable. So there's so Chewie's line when he goes to the tool shed and he just looks at it and he goes, "Poor people call this a house," always stuck with me. Anytime I've ever like been in a seen a shed or a room or anything that seemed oversized, I always think to myself like, man, poor people call this a house. And then and then there's a certain scene with Lawrence when he's looking at a magazine and he's about to do something he shouldn't be doing, and he's searching through to try and find an attractive picture, and he's like, "Oh, is there a swimsuit or something?" And he mumbles to himself. He goes, "Goddamn winter catalog," and I die every time he says that. As he's thumbing through the pictures, and so that one sticks with me as well. So those are my 2 funny lines that I just all the time stuck in my head.
And there's so much more in this film. I mean, there's one from Chewie where he breaks Trent's chair and Trent's bitching at him to fix it, and he's like, "I can fix this, I just need tools." And he goes, "They don't call me the Wood Wizard because I masturbate a lot." And it's just like,
exactly.
There's so many. He's walking out to the tool shed just a few seconds later, and he goes, "Hi, my name's Trent. My daddy bent me over this chair and beat me when I was little, so you need to fix it."
yeah.
The one I ended up going with that gave me, I went with a comedic line, and he's Chewie's messing around with the hockey stick, and he hits the light above him, and he bends over and picks up a piece of glass, and Jason's behind him, and he turns around and he's like, "Whoa, you scared the shit out of me, bro!" And he like tries to hand Jason the hockey stick and goes, "Are you looking for this? Because it completes your outfit." And that in the theater and even here at home every now and again, it gets a smirk out of me. It got a huge laugh in theaters when I went, and that's just one of the lines. There's so many more that you could have went. Lawrence saying there when Clay and Jenna run back inside telling him they found a dead body, and he's like, "Are you fucking with me because I'm high? That's not cool because I just finished smoking."
yeah. And he drank. Chewie drank some of Trent's liquor there, and he's like, "Oh, that's payment for being a douchebag."
Yep.
Like so good. When Donnie, when the redneck is in the when he's in like the barn and he hears Jason upstairs, he just kind of under his breath, he's just like, "What the fuck was that?" Like, again, it's just like that panic of not. It's just delivered perfectly. It's so funny.
I mean, I get a laugh out of another one from Donnie when Clay scares him. He goes, "Fucking lucky there, Stretch. Came that close to hitting the start button on a damn whoop-ass machine, boy."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have someone I work with who loves to repeat that line.
I mean, even in the beginning, like, "Oh my God, babies have more space in the uterus." Like, there's the way the lines in this are delivered. The people, I've heard a lot of people complain about the acting in this, but it's just like I enjoy it. I think they're like totally going for it and nailing it.
Yeah, I dig it. I mean, maybe none of them are reaching the acting prowess of Monica Keena in Freddy versus Jason, but I think everyone in this movie was pretty darn good in their roles. They all felt like young college people who were either drunk or high or horny or whatever. So I mean, I thought it was all pretty straightforward.
Absolutely. There's a lot of good line delivery in this, and it's fun all around. So you went first for a quote. I'll take over scene because I had a couple to mention on this one. And I mean, if I can cheat and for one of them just say like the opening 20 minutes of the film before we get the title card, that is absolutely a spectacle. You see these campers coming in and you think, all right, well, these are going to be our people. We're going to follow these guys throughout the film. And then they show up and Jason gets to killing within the first 10, 12 minutes of the film. So, and then once it gets to it and you get the title card after he chases down Whitney and goes to swing the machete at her and bam, title card, Friday the 13th, you're just like, holy shit, that was only the beginning. Like, where else is this film going to take us?
Yeah, that opening is almost like this little short film, this sort of Friday the 13th short film, and it's like, I've heard people refer to certain types of openings that movies have, and they call it like a mission statement opening, like the opening sort of action scene or chase scene or whatever that kind of gives you this sort of miniaturized taste of the whole movie in this little section right at the beginning, and this is one of those like great examples of it. You talk about certain films with decoy protagonists where, you watch Psycho or the beginning of Scream and you think a certain character is going to be the main character. And then the movie swerves and kills off that character. It's like this film does it with an entire cast of characters where you think they're going to be your prominent characters for, the next 90 minutes. And then I remember once they started to go off so quickly, one of my buddies was like, "Man, they're going quick in this movie." He's like, "They're already all starting to die," And then of course, Jason tears through the whole group in the first 20 minutes, and then smash cut to the title, and it's just like this oh shit moment. It's like what kind of movie you're in store for. It's very good.
Yeah, and I mean that first 20 minutes, it's so intense. It has you on your edge of the seat while you're watching. And then we kind of get our reintroductory to some new characters. We get like some comedic relief, and then we're introduced to Clay and stuff. So I think this film runs together very well, and I like the extended killer cut even more. I think it's about 8 minutes longer or so, but
Yeah.
that's the one I usually go to watch over the theatrical.
Yeah, that's the better version. It's got the uncensored kills, the more nudie bits, I guess, if that's what you're in for. And the only thing that I would maybe say that I don't love about the killer cut that's added in is I'm not the biggest fan of the kind of mini subplot where Whitney escapes and then is running and then gets recaptured by Jason and taken back. That feels a little kind of redundant, like it doesn't need to be there. Every other bit that they add back is totally A-okay and great in my book. And I'm like, I just don't need to see Whitney escape and get captured again. Outside of that, the killer cut is definitely the 100% better version of the movie. Back to what my favorite scene is. Also, the opening has Sister Christian in it, which is just a great song. So that's awesome. Yeah.
100% agree with you on that one. That's a jam.
Yeah. So my favorite, it's a banger. My favorite scene would probably be the sequence where Jason is using Lawrence as bait, and then the sheriff arrives and he's up on the roof. There's this great panning shot that pans up to Jason on the roof, and for me that's just like an iconic shot of Jason, similar to him on the camper in part 6. And then the sheriff arrives and Jason jumps down. And as soon as you think they're getting a little bit of relief or a little bit of help from an authority figure showing up, Jason just drops right down and takes him out instantly. So it's like, like the false hope is just nipped right in the bud. And I loved that. So that whole sequence is probably my favorite part of the movie.
Absolutely. I did want to throw out a couple like honorable mentions while we talk about it. And Jason getting his mask in this film is something that we probably would have to mention it. It's it's the reimagining of an iconic moment that happened in the third film, and it's just you don't really you see the paper sack kind of get ripped off of his face, and it's like, all right, now how's he gonna get his mask? And like you see it over in the corner and he reaches for it, and it's kind of like a cheap way to have it kind of just sitting up there for him, but once he does put it on and like goes to the mirror, I think that's like a super iconic shot for the remake. And I like how the mask looks old and like beat up and stuff like that. It's not this new mask that he found, so it makes it look even better.
I do like it. That is a good moment. There is a deleted alternate scene where it's an alternate death for Donnie, where he's downstairs and he's getting high and looking at the magazine, and then he puts the hockey mask on just because he's messing around, and then Jason comes down the stairs from stealing the kerosene, and then Jason cuts his head off and then is observing his decapitated head with the mask on, and then you see him drop the head down and keep the hockey mask. And I think I prefer that version of the scene a little bit, just because there's a moment later where you see Jason throw down a headless body that Clay and Jenna witness, and in the version of the movie that we have, it's not clear who that's supposed to be because he slits Donnie's throat in the theatrical and killer cut of the movies. But that deleted alternate scene shows that Donnie was beheaded, and then so when you see the headless corpse later, it explains that is Donnie's headless corpse. So it's kind of like helps the continuity there. But I also kind of like the idea of going back to part 3, where it was one of Jason's victims wearing the mask, and then it just seems like Jason plucks it off of him because he's out of curiosity. So like I kind of like that. He steals it from Shelley in part 3, and then he takes it off of Donnie's head in this one. I would if I could pick, I would put that alternate version of the scene in, but it's still a good moment.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know your favorite scene in the movie is Trent and Bree in the bedroom. You can say it. It's okay.
I mean, she's a 10 out of 10.
No arguments there.
All right. Go ahead and hit. I think, we might have the same favorite kill or the same favorite 3 that we chose. So why don't you go ahead and rattle yours off?
Yeah. So I've got I kind of got favorite kill in terms of invention. I've got favorite kill in terms of how satisfying it was to see, and then favorite kill because of how shocking it was. So, if I overlap with you on any of these 3, I apologize. But my favorite kill was Amanda in the sleeping bag. I know it seems a little elaborate for someone like Jason, but stringing someone up in a sleeping bag and slow roasting them over a fire is just so brutal. And also using that as a sort of piece of bait to attract some of the other, campers back. That's good. I like that. I like that Jason's, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. And then Trent getting impaled on the truck and it driving away as he's still kind of like moving a little bit. That was just satisfying because, from the scene he's introduced, you're just like, man, this is just that jerkhead that we can't wait to see get killed. And he turns, being a dick into an art form, and so it's good. The movie's going on, and you're just waiting for this guy to get it. So it's good when he just gets this very violent, over the top death because it's such a long time coming. And then Jenna's death was the one that shocked me the most. Like, you heard the gasps in the audience when she got it in the movie, and one of my buddies was like, "No way!" He was shocked as it was happening. It's like, because it's like you absolutely think that Clay, his sister, and Jenna, it's like, okay, these are our 3 that are going to make it, and just the way they abruptly kill her in the tunnels, you would almost think also, like, I think an original plan was for her to get killed in the sort of final confrontation, but to just have her axed out right there, it's shocking and it's brutal. And so, like, it shows that the movie's not messing around. And so I really like that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's our girl who she didn't do any drugs. She didn't really drink. She didn't have sex. I don't even know if she swears through the film. So, she's like our ideal final girl. And with, 10, 12 minutes left in the film, she gets it. And I mean, I was, watching the film. I was just like, no, like, come on. Like,
yeah. Our reaction is similar to Jared Padalecki's in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
He doesn't believe it.
And I mean, I absolutely agree on the other 2, like Amanda being strung up in the sleeping bag. And I mean, you can hear her skin just sizzling. Like, they added in like the little sound effects for that. And it's just, that is probably one of the worst ways possible to go. You can't get out and you're going to burn to death. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, probably every person in their life has been burned by a candle or a lighter or something. And, that little burn on your thumb or anything, any of your fingers or something like that, hurts. It irritates you. So imagine being burnt to a crisp, like roasted like a marshmallow over a fire. That's terrible.
Yeah.
And then
And
Trent,
special, yeah.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, I was gonna say special shout out to Lawrence's as well, because like I hate it's like it's sort of gut wrenching because he's like begging for help the entire time, and from his perspective, he doesn't understand why no one's coming to help him. He just knows that he's screaming his head off asking for help, and like his like 3 friends or whatever that he knows are just staying in the house. So it's like that one is like so like it's so like emotionally, it's like that's like the worst one, because it's like, damn, it's like he's begging for help and like they don't go out and help him. They have their reasons. They know he's being used as bait, but he doesn't know he's being used as bait. He's just like, why the hell isn't anyone coming to help me? So that's the one that's like you wouldn't want to get that death.
No, and then like you said, Trent's, I mean, his is very brutal, how Jason kind of stabs him and the machete's kind of upside down and he kind of just wrenches it up his chest, like back and forth, in and out of him like that. That's horrible, before he slams him on the back of the truck. And I thought one of the worst ones was Chewie getting the screwdriver in the throat as he's like gagging and stuff like that.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that would be horrible.
Yeah, because it's just like slowly just punctured through at this really slow rate. It almost feels like the kind of death that Kane Hodder would have suggested, instead of just stabbing him, to just like slowly puncture it through.
Yeah, and it's you can like slowly see Chewie like fighting at first and then just getting weaker, and then eventually just like not giving in to his fate, but he just doesn't have any fight left in him.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, the arrow to the head was a good one. That's a good surprise moment. It comes out of nowhere.
Absolutely, and I mean, they're having a blast, and I'm glad you brought that one up, because that got a big from everyone in the theaters, or like if I have like a friend or something over and they want to watch it or something, they're like, oh, I haven't seen this one, and put it in. That's one of the parts they're like, oh shit, or what the hell,
Jason makes the impossible shot.
It's what he does.
The expert marksman. I love it.
All right, why don't we go into some Jason Voorhees, the portrayal by Derek Mears. He is a phenomenal in this film. You wanna give your thoughts on that first?
Yeah, I think it's a good look. I think it's a good overall vibe. I think it's a great performance. There's an intensity to it that I really like. He's not just slow lumbering. He moves slow and with intention, but when he's in kill mode, it's almost like a crocodile or something waiting at the edge of the water, and like it's slow, and then when it's time to strike, it just moves like violently fast. And I just really like that about him. And he just has that sort of like raised in the wild on his own kind of a vibe to him, and I dig it. I just dig it a lot. It's very well done. I like that Jason's design goes back to like the putrid pale kind of complexion, as opposed to the sort of dark dead flesh kind of look that they've been doing for a while. So I like that as well.
Absolutely. Derek Mears did a phenomenal job. He's very imposing, he looks very good on camera. And I mean, Jason's back to running, and he, like you said, he's very intimidating in this film. And it's just, if I seen him out in the wild, I'm running. I might not be able to outrun him, but damn it, I'm going to try. But he's a large man in this who's running, and he's using all of his weapons at his disposal. He's set up like little trip wires around the camp to like that'll like ring back to bells underground in his tunnels to almost like notify him of where you're at in the camp. And he's like a very smart Jason in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that they made him smart and imposing, and he's a beast in this film, and I love it. He's one of the better top tier Jasons, I think, of the franchise.
Yeah, and we genuinely don't get a good look at Jason unmasked in this movie. They unmasked him, but it's you really don't get a good look at it. But there are behind the scenes photos that you can look at, and it's a great design for deformed, ugly under the mask Jason as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's a very close look like to the original. They tried, and I think they did a very good job of doing like an adult Jason from like looking at the younger kid Jason's
Yeah, it,
design.
it it does feel like that kind of amalgam of probably, I guess, the first 3 or 4 films. It does feel like that kind of a look, and it's a good one.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. Do we want to go into our ranking for the Friday the 13th franchise?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Would you
You
like
can.
me to take her away, or do you want to
I'll
spoil yours?
I'll let you take it away. I'll let you take it away.
All right, so for all 12 films going from number 12, my least favorite to my favorite. In the 12 spot, I have Jason Goes to Hell. In the 11 spot, I have Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. In the 10th spot, I have Part 5, A New Beginning. In the number 9 spot, I have Freddy vs. Jason. In the 8th spot, I have the original Friday the 13th. In the 7th spot, I have Jason X. In the 6th spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 3. In the number 5 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 2. The number 4 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. The number 3 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Our number 2 spot, our silver medal goes to Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. And our gold winner, Friday the 13th from 2009, is my favorite of the franchise.
Very, very, very well put. I noticed that once I finally had these laid out, all 12 of them, that there's a clear sort of 3 sets of 4. There's kind of like the bottom 4, and then there's kind of the middle 4, and then there's sort of the top 4. You can divide it into 3 sections pretty clearly. So starting at 12, working my way up, I've got Friday the 13th Part 5, The New Beginning, in the number 12 spot. In the number 11 spot, I have Jason Goes to Hell. In the number 10 spot, I have Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. In the number 9 spot, at the sort of upper level of the bottom 4, I have Jason X. Going to my middle 4 now, in the number 8 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 7. In the number 7 spot, I have Freddy versus Jason. In the number 6 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 1. In the number 5 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 3. And then so to get to my top 4, I have in the number 4 spot, Friday the 13th Part 2. In the number 3 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. The number 2 spot, I have Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. And I also, in my number 1 spot, I have Friday the 13th, 2009, the reboot. It's my favorite.
I just think it's so the beginning is so balls to the wall, and then I like the characters the most in this film, and the portrayal of Jason and being able to actually see this one in theaters. I think all of that combined did this one a favor for me, and that's why it lands in the number 1 spot. It's just all in all, it's a one of my favorite films, and especially for the Friday the 13th franchise.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the modern era, I think it has to be regarded as the best slash most quintessential slasher movie of the new millennium. I mean, that might be like a bold thing to say, but compared to what the Texas Chainsaw movies or the Halloween movies and the Halloween remakes and the modern trilogy, it's like I just think this is slasher movie 101, and it's such a perfect kind of synthesis of the hallmarks of the franchise as a whole. Characters that you like some of them, you hate some of them, you want to see some of them get killed, you want to see other ones make it. It's sort of low budget filmmaking in the woods, teens sort of making jokes and drinking and getting it on, and then Jason coming and just killing them in vicious ways. It's such a kind of, for any new fan, or if you're trying to get someone into the franchise to kind of get what it's about, it really is the kind of perfect introductory movie, because once you get to Part 5, every movie is like the weird asterisk kind of movie. It's, oh, this is the one where he's dead the whole time and it's someone else. This is the one where he comes back as a zombie. This is the one where he fights a sidekick. This is the one where he goes to New York. This is the one where he goes to hell. This is the one where he goes to space. This is the one where he fights Freddy. And then beyond that, you're going to the first 4, and it's like, okay, well, this is the one where he's not in it and his mom's the killer, or this is the one where he's just wearing the sack on the whole time, or this is the one that was made in 3D, so it has something sticking out at the camera every single time, So it just feels like this is like that, it's that perfect restart that kind of gets all of the hallmarks, all of the things you want to see and need in these movies, and like none of those kind of weird things dragging it down or going AWOL. It's just a by the book, standard issue, not remaking the mold kind of a Friday the 13th movie, and it's hilarious and it's brutal and it's vicious and it's entertaining and it's intense and it's got a great Jason, and it's I don't know, it's the peak of the franchise for me.
Absolutely, I agree, and I mean, we got Chris's final thoughts pretty much.
Yeah. Sorry, I was I built my final thought rant right into it.
Nope, I love it. And this film makes for good conversation. So I mean, my final thoughts on the film are just like, watch it. I mean, this film probably isn't suitable for younger viewers, and I mean, I seen all these at a younger age, but I mean, if you're one of those parents that doesn't want your kids to see something like this, don't watch it when they're around. Don't let them watch it. But I mean, I showed these to my little sister when she was younger. I watched all these films and stuff like that when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All the time that I was younger, and they're great. This is one of the films that I go back to a lot in this franchise when. It's a late Saturday night and I'm just like, I want to watch a horror flick. This is one of the ones I will put on a lot if I'm home alone or a friend's over or anything like that. And it's just like Chris said, it's got an awesome Jason. It's got a good cast that you can have fun and connect with and follow them, cheer for some to die, cheer for others to live. And all in all, I just think that, the director, Marcus Nispel, did a fantastic job with this. And I think that he set us up perfectly for a sequel with this film, and just nothing developed, sadly.
Yeah, and from what I understand, they were finally going to do Jason in the Snow for the sequel. They were going to finally do, blood on the ice kind of a setting, in the wintertime. And man, oh man, that would have been great. I think one of the story treatments that they pitched was that at the beginning of it, you were going to see Whitney's corpse kind of like frozen in ice or frozen in the snow or something, just kind of like imply that Jason did get her at the end of this movie. I don't know if they were setting that up for some kind of revenge with Clay. I didn't read too in depth of that, but it could have been a great sequel, and it could have, been, we could have had a nice little 3-film cycle here that could have really, delivered the goods, and, we didn't get it, but, I think the Friday the 13th franchise for now, I think it ended with its best entry.
100% agree with you on that. Well, even though this film didn't have any sequel or anything coming up, and it is our last technical episode on a Friday the 13th film, we are going to do, as I stated in the Freddy vs. Jason episode, Chris and I are going to do a special episode to end the franchise. We are going to rank all the final girls from the Friday the 13th films, and then all of the killers / like Jason Voorhees incarnations in these films. So that should be a fun conversation. We've done 12 films, so we'll have 12 final girls, and then we'll have 13 total rankings for our killers / Jason Voorhees rankings. So that'll be a fun conversation to have. So Chris, as always, thank you for joining me on these. We're almost done with Friday the 13th and moving on from there.
Yeah, and it's only appropriate that we would find a way to do 13 episodes on the Friday the 13th franchise.
Absolutely. That was the entire plan all along. But again, thank you for joining me on this one. We are doing our final girl and Jason Voorhees / Friday the 13th killer rankings next week. So thanks for joining me. Thanks anyone who's out there listening, and until next time.
Are you looking for this? Because it completes your outfit.